I realized there are unique, outrageous acts of love that can be committed by me and me alone, and that is the unique purpose, obligation, joy, and responsibility. It's my ability to respond to reality. That's my outrageous act of love.
A planetary awakening in love through a unique self-symphony.
What a privilege it is to be part of this global community.
There's a voice within me that asks, who am I, right? Who am I in all of this?
Each and every one of us has a unique gift to give that we desperately need.
Welcome to the heart of the revolution, everyone. It is with deep joy we are together today in one mountain, many paths. Our mission is what Barbara Marx Hubbard and Dr. Mark Goffney call a planetary awakening in love through unique self-symphonies. We are activating a new humanity, an awakening as a new species. Homo amor, the fulfillment of Homo sapiens. As a church, a synagogue, a mosque, a temple, a zendo, no one is excluded, everyone is included, and we come together to attune to the evolutionary impulse awakening within us. Welcome home, everyone. I am Christina Tahel, the co-executive producer, along with Krista Josepha, Jacqueline Clark, and Jamie Long, and we are so delighted to be together with each and every one of you for our live community broadcasts, week 306. Wow, right? What a privilege it is to be part of a community where we support humanity's flourishing. Use the Zoom and the Facebook chat functions to say hello, to let us know where you're from, to resonate the prayer, and to share your reflections on the teachings. On Zoom, check that your chat settings say everyone so that we can all hear from you. Care to step deeper into community or into the Dharma through the work and practice of creating the great Homo Amor library? We are a thriving community and work group. You can reach out to me for more information, and my email is in the chat box now. Our weekly gathering, Right into the Evolutionary Love Codes, will not be meeting for the month of August. Do join us when we begin again on September 5th. For those of you who are new to One Mountain, Many Paths, we normally receive a deep transmission from First Principles and First Values by Dr. Mark Goffney and Barbara Marx Hubbard through recorded sermons of hers. But for 3 more weeks, Dr. Mark Goffney is stepping back, inviting our unique self-symphony to play our unique instruments, where we focus on practicing and embodying first principles and first values, the new story for a new humanity. We have an incredible lineup of people who have been involved, most of us studying for many years, living and generating the planetary awakening in love that is at the core of the political and social revolution of love. We miss Dr. Goffney and we hold him close to our hearts, blessing him in this time of sacred travel through Europe. We look forward to his return on September 11th. Also in September, as part of launching the Unique Self Institute, we will resume our Saturday study group to dive into awakening your unique self with Claire Molinar, David Cicerci, and myself. More email information will be coming soon from Jamie Long. What to expect today? First, a Dharma recap from myself from last week. Then we move into setting the framework for Homo Amor with Kirsten Zohar. Then David Cicerci resonates the evolutionary love code that we're working with. Then we step into the experience and practice of Homo Amor with Jacqueline Clark, followed with a song from Krista Josepha. And then we move into meditation to enter prayer, again with David Cicerci. Finally, Krista invites us deeper into community, and to close, we bring people on for our goodbyes and a short dance party. Kirsten Zohar has a diverse background in teaching and coaching in areas as varied as professional stage dancing, physics, human resource development, and project management. She has been on a conscious path of personal and spiritual growth for decades until she found her home with Dr. Mark Goffney and his Trans Lineage Path Sangha in 2011. Since then, she has served as the executive director of the Center for Integral Wisdom for many years and has recently shifted to the position of editorial director of the Great Library of Cosmoerotic Humanism, working in close collaboration with Dr. Mark Goffney on the foundational books in progress. Jacqueline Clark trained as a counselor, working for many years in both private practice and a variety of settings, including health and education. She is also an ordained interfaith minister. Allured to Dr. Mark Goffney and the teachings of Cosmoerotic Humanism in 2019, she now devotes all of her time to helping create a new story of value based on first principles and first values. We welcome all who are new. We need you. If this is your first time or one of your first times, these teachings do stand on their own, and every week builds on the previous teachings. We do encourage you to go back and listen to previous episodes. Today, you may hear unique language. Trust the magic ways the language or Dharma comes through your understanding. One Mountain, Many Paths is radically committed to telling the new universe story. Now, for my recap from last week's One Mountain, Many Paths. Evolutionary unique self as a participant in the evolution of God. Last week, Dr. Tom Ronan Goddard invited us to think about and to feel into this bold statement of identity. I am nature. I am evolution. He said, put down all our delusions, drop them by the road, awaken to what is fundamentally true about our identity, awaken to the breathtaking truth that each of us is participating in the holy process of evolving divinity. Wow. He shared how these delusions have been embedded in our emotions and locked in our bodies, often since we were quite young, and that he has traced some of his delusions back to when he was in the womb, actually, pointing to the deep, deep, deep need to engage our bodies and not merely just our minds. This is not about the power of belief. We're not convincing ourselves of something. This is about waking up to what is true so that we can act in alignment with nature, with evolution, with reality, and become an evolutionary unique self. We are participants in the interior realms of all of creation. We are not merely the physical pieces that make us up. We are also on the inside of every one of those pieces. every atom, every subatomic particle. We're on the inside of the inside. We are the interior of the cosmos. Imagine the evolution of reality, of the goddess, of God, of Allah, of Buddha as a river, inexorably flowing towards greater wholeness, greater interconnectivity, greater uniqueness, greater complexity. Imagine the creation of the universe or the great flaring forth as an event that has been happening for at least 13.7 billion years and continues to happen in this very moment, right here in this moment. Those of us who learn to navigate the flow of this river of creation can playfully navigate the currents in harmony with its flow, can live a life of joy, possibility, delight, and service. But those of us who refuse to acknowledge the flow of that river and who are in it and fight to swim at angles to that stream or even try to go upstream are doomed to struggle endlessly against the reality of the river's flow and the reality of who we are. Swimming at cross current, which all of us have done from time to time, or as all of us also likely have done against the current, trying to swim upstream is the ego's move. Swimming with the revolutionary current blends our yearning with the reality that reality, God, the goddess is evolving, and that we can find that current and we can blend our energy with that current. Let's step into our evolutionary unique selves, live in an evolutionary context with an evolutionary relationship to life, experiencing the evolutionary impulse awake and alive in us, and understand that evolution is not a process that merely happens out there. Evolution lives within us, and as such, we participate in the evolution of God. Now, I invite us to more deeply enter into the holy and the sacred space of One Mountain, Many Paths, and I turn my word to you, beloved Kirsten Zohar.
Thank you so much, beloved Christina Tahel. It is wonderful to see your unique being shine every Sunday in reweaving what has been said, reflected through the prism of your own beautiful heart, mind, and soul. Oh my God, oh my goddess. And it is an insane delight, honor, and pleasure to be with you all today as part of this special summer program and together with this gorgeous, unique self symphony, and especially with my beloved Dharma sister Jacqueline to guide us through today's service. It is also a new and exciting experience for me, and I believe for both of us, to be on this side of the camera. And I have to admit that I am a bit camera shy. So it is pretty exciting for me to be here today. Thank you, Dr. Mark Gaffney, for this invitation, which is a great honor and privilege. In today's episode, I have the honor to set part of the framework, hopefully clarifying a couple of the words we're using here, while Lady Jacqueline will then bring it all back into our personal experience and everyday practices. Before we start, I would like to say a couple of words, especially for the new people, about the unique language we are using here. We are actually trying to create new language in two distinct ways. First, by giving new and fresh meaning to existing words. For example, we are using the words God or religion or intimacy in new, exciting ways. And whenever we do so, we are trying to point to the new meaning of these words. Second, by actually creating new words, not as a kind of jargon in a regressive way, like a cult would be doing it, in order to exclude people who do not know this language, but in an evolutionary way, as the old language does not fully capture the new emergent meaning we are pointing to. Words like this are, for example, unique self, outrageous love, Homo Amor, which is the fulfillment of Homo Sapiens, or Unique Self Symphony. We are actually weaving a new tapestry of meaning together. Every word is filled with layers upon layers of depth, rooted in the exterior and interior sciences and emerging from the amazing work Dr. Mark has been doing over the past decades. And if you are new here, while we are totally trying to always explain every word we are using, please give yourself some time to fully grasp this new language. It will reveal more and more of its depth over time. And with that, let's begin. We are just back from our 10th Outrageous Love Festival, which, at least for me, has been one of the highlights of every one of the last 10 years. Although each of these festivals was unique and had its own topic, the overarching theme of all these festivals together has been, how do we respond to what we call the meta crisis, both with a new story of value based on evolving first principles and first values, as well as with our own transformation to what we call Homo Amor. As Dr. Mark Gaffney has said many times, we are in a time between stories, both collectively or culturally and personally. And crises are our evolutionary drivers. That is true for us as a culture, and it is certainly true for me. Over the last 2 years, I went through my own crisis, actually the second big crisis of my life. And in that, I was able to both deepen my understanding of these gorgeous teachings that I have devoted my life to, my practice and embodiment of them, as well as the way I work and collaborate with Dr. Mark and the team. So although it hasn't been exactly easy, I am extremely grateful and happy for that crisis. And I truly hope that we as humanity will be at some point grateful for all the lessons we have learned from the meta crisis that we are facing together right now. That will be the time when we have finally overcome the polarization we are in culturally and have started to truly self-identify as Homo Amor. That is why the name of today's presentation is The Fierce and Tender Journey of Homo Amor, or we could also call it Dharmic Distinctions as a Path from Polarization to Paradox and Beyond. So what do we mean by that? I have had the privilege of studying and working with Dr. Mark Gaffney since 2011. And I believe it was in 2014 when it first occurred to me that his gorgeous teachings are actually based on a brilliant set of distinctions. It was through courses with Landmark that I had first become aware of how distinctions create our world. In their language, to distinguish something means to take something from an undifferentiated background and bring it to the foreground. So it is not only that we distinguish between two things that are kind of the opposite of each other, for example, between ego and unique self, but we also distinguish something from nothing, foreground from background, so that for the first time we can point to something and give it a name. For example, by defining intimacy in a new way, like Dr. Mark has done in his intimacy formula as shared identity in the context of relative otherness. So we share an identity, a we, while not losing our own unique identity, times mutuality of recognition, we recognize each other, times mutuality of pathos, we feel each other, times mutuality of values, we have shared values and can therefore trust each other, times mutuality of purpose, we stand for a shared purpose or cause. Intimacy begins to appear in a new way, both in our lives, but also in the cosmos. We literally begin to see it everywhere, from elementary particles making love to each other up to us. It was about the same time as I was thinking about this when Mark started to teach about core mimetic structures. The word meme was originally coined by Richard Dawkins in his book, The Selfish Gene. We could say that memes are for cultural inheritance what genes are for biological inheritance. While genes are transmitted through sex, memes are transmitted through stories and cultural narratives, which is exactly one of the reasons why we say that we need a new story. And it occurred to me that these memes were also based on sets of distinctions. So I started to discuss that insight with Mark, and he told me that it was, of course, already built into the Dharma. For example, in the creation myth of Genesis, God is making distinctions. God distinguishes between light and darkness, day and night, heaven and earth. So this whole myth is not about the history of planet Earth, but about the way creation happens anytime and everywhere. Even scientifically, all that happened after the Big Bang is reality making more and deeper distinctions. Wavicles, distinguished at different moments as waves and particles with different qualities, and then integrating these qualities into larger and more complex entities, atoms, molecules, cells, etc., with ever new qualities. The way we perceive anything is by seeing distinctions, light and dark, different colors, tastes, etc. Distinctions work a bit like these 3D images where we only perceive a sea of colors at first. But then when we gaze at them for a time and relax our focus, all of a sudden an image jumps out of the picture. That image or text or whatever it is was there all along as part of the background. But then it jumps out and becomes the foreground where we are able to see and distinguish it. That is what distinctions do. We distinguish something that was always there but hiding in the background. And once we have distinguished it, we cannot not see it anymore. It becomes part of our reality. We begin to see it all the time. Quite often, these distinctions come with their own seemingly polar opposites. A or not A, black or white, something or nothing. But that is only so at first sight. On a deeper level, distinctions are part of dialectical triangles: thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Let's look at a couple of examples from the Dharma. One of the Dharmic distinctions Mark has made is the distinction of unique self. Most traditions have an understanding of the difference between ego and true self. Ego is personal, special, and separate. True self is impersonal, same, that is not special, and all one. So the Eastern Enlightenment traditions claim that ego or separateness is the cause of all suffering. So in order to overcome suffering, we need to give up our ego, which includes both our separateness and our specialness, in order to become true self, one with the all. The Western Enlightenment traditions, on the other hand, claimed that our sense of being special is the cause of all human dignity. So we should never get rid of our dignity, of the dignity of our individuality, our specialness, because doing so has led to so many of the atrocities that all too often happened in the name of religion. Now, here comes Dr. Mark. Unique self enters stage left. There is actually a way of perceiving ourselves as being both one with the all and absolutely special, even unique, and therefore of having ultimate dignity, unique self. Like our arms are totally unique and special while still being part of the same body. That means that we can let go of our separateness while being totally special and unique. Wow. Thesis, I am special and distinct at the level of ego, and antithesis, I'm all one at the level of true self, integrate into the synthesis. I am an irreducible unique self, a unique expression of true self, of the all. Wow. The same happens again at an even higher level. There's the distinction between being and becoming. What would be the synthesis of that? If we combine the being of true self that lives in us with the becoming of the evolutionary impulse that also lives in us, which are both impersonal, and incarnate those together with the absolute special personalness of unique self, evolutionary unique self appears. I am evolution, but I am a unique and personal expression of evolution. Wow. A second example, let's take the distinction between ordinary love and outrageous love that Mark has made. Ordinary love is our understanding of love in mainstream culture. It is personal and often a strategy of the ego. It is small. Some contrast that with the notion of absolute love that is unconditional, timeless, and impersonal. Outrageous love, on the other hand, transcends and includes both ordinary love and absolute love. It is strong. It is the underlying force of the entire universe and of evolution, while simultaneously being totally personal. As Dr. Mark Gaffney has said, the difference between ordinary love and outrageous love is like the difference between a very large number and infinity. A few more examples that Jacqueline will deepen in her part. The clash between being totally independent and totally dependent resolves in interdependence. The clash between autonomy and communion resolves in intimacy. That is, remember, shared identity in the context of relative otherness, which is exactly where homo amor lives. The clash between masculine and feminine qualities, or what we call here line and circle qualities, resolves at a higher level where those qualities interpenetrate each other to love the moment open. Fierce self-discipline and tender self-love come together in the devotion that lives in homo amor. This really hit home for me in that second big crisis of my life, when I had to literally learn how to love myself in a whole new way. Not the superficial self-love that is somehow about pampering ourselves, but a tough love at times that includes fierce self-discipline and the most tender devotion to my own evolutionary unique self. One of the places where I can practice this daily is in my Kundalini yoga practice that teaches me to both listen to my body in a new way and to keep going when the going gets tough. There is a clear distinction, for example, between a sharp pain that tells me to stop and be gentle with my body and a somewhat dull pain that, if I go beyond it, often transforms into the most blissful pleasure. As Dr. Mark Gafni so often reminds us, as homo amor, as evolutionary unique selves, we need to become comfortable with our discomfort. So let's feel into this for a moment and follow me, if you like, into a brief exercise. Put all the fierceness you can find in yourself into your right hand, the power to set clear boundaries, to say yes or no, to restrict yourself, but also the discipline to push through if needed. Hold it there. At the same time, put all the tenderness you can find in yourself into your left hand, the softness in you, the gentleness, the surrender to the moment, the yes to your deepest devotion to play a larger game, but from a totally tender place. Hold it there. Now, breathe deeply, all the way in and out. Feel the tension between your two hands and slowly begin to move them together. Feel how the two hands and the two qualities merge. Let them dance. Feel them in your whole body. And then feel into our final example, the clash between living in the now, the present moment, and living in the wounds of the past or the fearful anticipation of the future, getting lost there somehow, resolves in the eternity that lives in the now, in which we can find both our memory of the past and follow the past, the call to heal the past, and the memory of the future and follow the call to co-create that future. Thank you all so much for being with me today. And with that, I give my word over to you, beloved David, to resonate today's code.
Thank you, Kirsten. Welcome, everyone. This is an evolutionary community. So Kirsten so beautifully actually provided distinctions that don't separate, but integrate and weave at a higher level. So that's what we're doing here. We're actually weaving reality, separate parts, and bringing them to larger wholes as part of the evolutionary process. So I'm about to resonate the code, and the code actually consolidates the theme, the topic, the principles of today, and so that we can actually focus on it. So here's this week's evolutionary love code. I'll just put it in the chat box. Oops, there we go. So you can resonate it with me. The past, present, and future are first principles and first values of reality. The past calls us, the present calls us, and the future calls us. We are called by our past self, by our present self, and our future self. Unique self incorporates all three. Each call has a shadow expression and each has a light expression. Homo amor, the fulfillment of Homo sapiens, responds to the call of the past, the call of the present, and the call of the future in every instant of external time. Responding to only one or two of these calls actually generates distortion. Clarity and sacred power only emerge from the full response of this holy trinity of past, present, and future calls. So with that resonance, I turn my word to you, beloved Jacqueline.
Thank you so much, David, for that wonderful resonating of the code. And before we start, I'd just like to say my own personal thank you to Dr. Mark for trusting me to be here today, taking my turn with my beautiful sister, Kirsten. And I'd also just like to say that it feels pretty strange to be on this side of the camera. Usually I'm tucked away in the back doing unseen things, but here I am. So here we are in the fierce and tender journey of Homo amor. Homo amor being, of course, the new human and the new humanity, the evolution of Homo sapiens. And what I'd like to do is dive into the experience and practice of Homo amor. We shall be looking at how we are called to our greatness by our past self, our present self, and our future self. And I will share some of my own journey with you, my journey to the self-recognition of my own innate wholeness. A few snapshots from my sacred autobiography, if you will. And this is the journey that we are all on. The journey to the new human, evolutionary, unique self, Homo amor, who feels it deeply within themselves, within the very, very cells of their being, that they are the leading edge of evolution, that we are an embodied experience of being lived by love, as love, not merely as a separate self, but as part of the actual field of love, with the realization that, yes, I affect that field. I'm causing that field. I am an individuated expression of the whole, a unique self. I am radiant. I am shining. I have never lived before and I will never live again. I am the leading edge of 13.7 billion years of evolution. Wow, how's that? So one of the things I'd like to do is to point out here that one of our core practices that we have in becoming Homo amor is to begin to tell our own story about moving through the selves, from separate self to true self, to unique self, to evolutionary unique self. So as I speak, this might be something you'd like to consider. It might be something you might feel drawn to do at a later date. So I am going to start with the story of Hansel and Gretel. And I have been assured that even the people in America know the story of Hansel and Gretel. So here goes. So I'm sure you all remember that in the fairy tale, Hansel and Gretel leave a trail of breadcrumbs so that they can find their way back home. But of course, in the story, the birds have eaten the breadcrumbs and they can't find their way back home. But for us, I'm really pleased to say, the breadcrumbs are still there, waiting to be discovered. The breadcrumbs are the call of the future. These are the signposts on our journey, and they litter both our past and our present. But there's one huge difference. These breadcrumbs take us forward, not backwards. We evolve, we never return. The past, the present, and the future are always ever present in our life. Our past self calls us to do the work that is necessary in order to evolve. And the thing is not to get stuck in the story of our brokenness. As Dr. Marx says, we are inherently good, not innately good. And we have to do the work. We have to wake up, we have to grow up, and we have to show up. Our present self calls us to be fully present in the present moment. The present moment can only be fully experienced, fully blown open when we bring all of our focus, all of our attention, and we live there with full audacity. And the thing about the present is not to get sucked into a sort of, oh, what can I call it? A kind of blissful inertia, maybe, where we get seduced by true self, which is the oneness with the all, which is absolutely beautiful. Of course it is, but it's not the end of the story. There's actually more than that. And then our future self calls us forward. It calls us forward to everything that we can be, to our wholeness, to Homo Amor. So there are actually many doorways through which I could enter, but the one through which we are going to go is the one that has actually been the most significant in my own life, which is the doorway of autonomy and communion. And my journey to holding these polarizations in dialectical tension, you remember the triangles that Kirsten talked about, as Homo Amor. So autonomy on one side, communion on the other, with intimacy, ecstasy, Homo Amor at the top. So a little bit of sharing. I was born into a family where, to, I must admit, my childhood eyes, one parent was the embodiment of autonomy and independence. And here there was the energy of thrust, of movement, of division and power. Although I must say it wasn't really power in its true sense, it was power in the sense of power over. And my personal experience with my other parent was that they embodied communion, dependence, submission. There was an abdication of power, to my mind. All of what we might call the circle energy was concentrated here. Holding, nurturing, enfolding, the wetness of opening, receiving the softness of the breast, the quivering tenderness of embrace. And you know what? I found both totally overwhelming. I yearned for closeness with the parent who was distant. I felt unloved and I felt unseen. And I believed that I was at fault. I tried to contort myself into shapes that I thought would make me lovable. I denied my own essential nature. I felt unacceptable. But at the same time, I was trying desperately to keep at bay the other parent because I felt that I would be swamped by what I experienced as their neediness. So I shut down, I withdrew, I hid. And I actually became very adept at being the queen of pretense. But it was exhausting. I had no energy and I had no motivation for life, not surprisingly. And along the way, I'm sure you'll realize that I'd actually rejected my power and I'd rejected intimacy. So there wasn't much left, was there, to be honest? And I sort of questioned what was the point of it all. So my experience was that everything was polarized. But through the practice of mythologizing my story rather than pathologizing it, I now realize that I had the perfect parents, the parents that I needed to draw me forward into being my unique self. And that nothing, as Dr. Mark says, nothing is a mistake, nothing is an error. Everything is perfect. And I'd also like to really point out that my childhood experience was interpreted through myself as I was as a child. So at that point, there was no way I could be aware of my parents' wholeness. It was what I could see was what I thought was the whole of them. So this isn't about denigrating my parents. It's actually about saying this was my experience. And the interesting thing is that if you spoke to either of my siblings, one had a completely different experience and one had a somewhat different experience, which I think highlights that we all have our own realities in some way. And yet, in the midst of all this, the breadcrumbs were there. Remember, we talked about the breadcrumbs, the call of the future. So when I look back, I can actually find the calls of the future that were there all along, embedded in my past. And one such call of the future was really, I think, the innate knowing that I had, that somehow these opposing energies needed to be balanced. So in the only way I could as a child, I tried to do it out there. I became a master of manipulation and control. I tried to change my behavior to elicit the response I wanted from a particular parent. But not surprisingly, I'm just going to say this failed miserably. And I didn't realize at that point that the work actually needed to take place within me, that it wasn't about doing the work out there. It wasn't about manipulation and control. It was actually about work within myself. And I'd also like to point out that I was living as a victim. I wasn't living as a player. I was cut off from my feelings. I was in unbearable pain, trying to do things the only way I knew, and I was actually in limbo. And the other call from the future was, for me, this intense yearning that I've always had. I knew that this wasn't how life should be. And I always yearned for more. There was something in the air. There was like a lingering fragrance. It's the only way I can describe it, of something barely remembered. Well, actually not really remembered, but almost remembered. It was like, I just knew that there was more than this, a gentle whisper, sometimes sort of saying, yes, 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 you're right. But I didn't know what to do with it. So what I'd like to do now is pause just for a moment or two and ask you, my beautiful people who are listening to this, whether you might actually be able to identify a call from the future in your life, maybe something from the past or something from the present. And if you do, it would be absolutely great if you'd like to share it in the chat box. And then what I'll do is just read a few out. So if that works, and if you actually can't think of anything, which is great too, because sometimes when we're put on the spot, we can't, maybe it's something you'd like to reflect upon afterwards. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So, Kirsten, one of my calls from the future, says Kirsten, I always felt an extremely deep and painful yearning to wholeness, oneness, and integration, which led me on the spiritual path to integral theory. And finally, Dr. Mark. Thank you, Kirsten. Becca says, the call to the future, the cree of the red tail circling overhead. How beautiful is that? Krista. My call from the future shared visions of my greatness and said, this is who you are meant to be. So you see, wow, it's really, really true. When we look, we can find these calls. And Colleen says, no bird flies too high that flies on its own wings. Jonathan Livingston Seagull changed my life. Yes, I remember that book too. Lynn, the call to wed the divine. Anne-Marie, the call visionary. And one more, Carol, the call to notice and let myself surrender to be. And just one more, Tom, I'm called to have the book on unique self-practices that Dr. Gaffney and I are co-authoring published before the end of the year. So how beautiful is that? Thank you all so much for sharing. I feel quite enlivened by your sharings. So I'm thinking you actually get the picture that I've shared. I was called by the future, but I was unable to make sense of the call at that time. There was just a lot of work to be done. And the work was actually, first of all, I needed to open. I needed to feel, and I needed to feel it all. I needed to allow it all in. And the paradox is that it was only when I allowed the pain, the unbearable pain to penetrate me fully, that I was able to experience all the pleasure. I mean, I'd always kept pain at bay. It was too painful to go there. The pain of the world was overwhelming. But as Dr. Mark says, the opposite of pain, the opposite of pleasure is not pain. It's being comfortably numb. And I mean, yes, I will agree, I was numb. It wasn't very comfortable, but I was numb. And the paradox is that once I opened to the pain, then I could experience all the pleasure. And it was only then that I could begin to access my full radical aliveness in the present. And that, of course, is the third. I also needed to claim my tenderness and my fierceness, all the line qualities that we talked about, and all the circle qualities. I had to allow my quivering tenderness and my radical thrust, my aliveness, my drive, my power. I had rejected power, seeing only power over, but I needed to claim true power, and I needed to learn to surrender from a place of power. And I needed to open to intimacy. I needed to do all these things within myself so that I could actually bring all these opposing qualities together into the third, that is Homo More. And I actually have a little secret for you. And that is, if we do that, then miracles happen. Our relationships can become transformed. Once I stopped resenting my parents for not being able to love me in the way I thought I needed them to, I actually began to be able to love them for who they actually are. I was able to see them in their wholeness for the first time in my life. I was able to feel into what shaped them, their parents and their grandparents, the actions back through the generations. And there was a home for me. I began to locate myself in the great chain of being. And I also realized that they had never felt desired or loved, adored, needed, chosen, or intended, or recognized. And what struck me was that actually I could offer this to them. So instead of residing in the past and because you didn't love me the way I wanted to, I actually went from what can I get to what can I give, which was just the most beautiful thing. And I can only say that all relationships can transform in this way. And isn't that just the most beautiful thing out? It's almost like, if you want to put it another way, once I knew my true name, I could begin to call them by their true name. And there's actually a beautiful, beautiful song. I'd just like to read you some of the words. Please call me by my true name, that I can hear my cries and laughters are one, so I can feel that joy and pain are one. Please call me by my true name, so that I can wake up and the doors of my heart will be left open. And with that, I'd like to finish here, and I'd like to hand over to my beautiful, wonderful Dharma sister, Krista, who will sing this absolutely beautiful song for us. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Thank you all.
joy is like spring, so warm. It makes flowers bloom all over the earth. My pain is like a river of tears, so vast it fills the four oceans. Please call me by my true name, so I can hear all my cries and laughter at once, so I can feel how my joy and pain are one. Please call me by my true name, so I can feel, and the door of my heart can be left open. Please call me by my true name, so I can hear all my cries and laughter at once, so I can feel how my joy and pain are one. Please call me by my true name, so I can heal, and the door of my heart can be left open. May the door of our hearts be left open. May the door of our hearts be left open.
Thank you, Krista, opening our hearts with your voice. So now that we've gotten this overview and helped, Kirsten actually helped frame this conversation with distinctions, and Jacqueline so beautifully transmitted her experience of how these distinctions show up in her life. This is where we actually turn to prayer. And why do we pray? Well, we're not praying to the traditional God only that's owned by one religion, that's kind of this bearded man in the sky. We're actually connecting with the second person of reality, the biggest understanding, the biggest experience of reality that we can. And we also know that we can experience God directly in third person, second person, and first person. So I'm going to briefly invite us into guided meditation into these three persons of God, so we can actually find the call of the future within ourselves. And so first we look around us and we actually look for God in the third person, which is the binding force of the cosmos. As Kirsten mentioned, outrageous love, the force that moves all things, eros, from simplicity to complexity, from less intimacy to more intimacy. So we experience this eros inside of us in first person. So we actually can look within ourselves as God having a unique experience and be intimate with our own parts, right? And so I'm just going to invite us to actually take some deep breaths, and with every breath, actually be more intimate with our parts. So intimate with our body. And whatever needs to be loved, and we can actually shine love with our consciousness into our body, into our heart and our emotions and our feelings, with every breath, shining love into our heart. And with our thoughts, all of our thoughts that are arising, we can actually be present to them and give them love and give them presence and intimacy. It's the Jesuits actually that originally taught me that the deepest place within ourselves, the deepest voice within ourselves is actually God speaking within us. And Dr. Mark actually helped me to realize that God is evolution, is Eros. So Eros is speaking within us. So if we go deeper inside and find that yearning, find the deepest yearning in our being, where do we feel the yearning to transcend the limitations of separation and form larger wholes in our lives, in our work, in our family, in our friendships, in our community, in our nation, in our world? Where do we experience separation, contraction? So feel into, and I'm feeling into my body, my heart, my mind, my soul, my entire being, yearning, this experience of radical aliveness, seeking, desiring, moving towards higher levels of wholeness and deeper connectivity. That's what Eros is it lives in our very bodies. So as we breathe, we can feel into our deepest yearning, which is God's yearning, which is the evolutionary impulse yearning for more love. And we also turn towards God in the second person because we know that we can't do this alone. It's actually sometimes hard to figure it out on our own. And actually, we don't live in a separate universe. So even when we feel this yearning, we know that we're participating in the yearning force of being and becoming, in the yearning force of God. And so we turn to God, God in the second person, reality, the personal experience of essence, and we pray. So as we go into our prayer, our song for today, to actually feel into our yearning and set that yearning on the altar and pray for God in the second person to actually help us realize that yearning in the world, which is our calling from the future. So take us inside to the Holy and Broken Hallelujah. And as we listen, write your prayers in the chat box. Pray for everything so that the future self that's calling us from the present can actually move us towards our yearning. So take us inside, Christina, the Holy and Broken Hallelujah.
Heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you...
Hallelujah. Let's go to the chat box and let's hear some of these prayers. So Carol, I pray that we may all open to our yearning to wake up and let the door of our hearts be left open. Yes, amen. Terry Nelson, I pray that to fully become me in this lifetime or get a little bit closer. Yes, Rob, I pray that our collective minds will open up to the new ways of living together here on earth. Yes, Lynn, I pray for all babies to be born into the world of outrageous love and intimacy. Yes, Jacqueline, I pray for us all to come together in unique self-symphonies as we work together, allured by the future to bring healing to all beings. And finally, Oriana, I pray to be the world awakening as infinite love, heart first. So we lift all of these prayers to the sky and know that we're participating in the prayer of the cosmos for more love. And I turn it to you, beloved Krista, to take us home.
Yes, wow. Thank you, David, for that beautiful meditation to enter into prayer. And thank all of us for being here, for placing our attention on the evolution of the very source code itself. And today we had the privilege to go on this beautiful journey. First, in the beginning, Kirsten shared with us, what does it mean to make distinction? What does it mean to tell a new story? What does it mean to share this new language? And there was this fierceness in these distinctions and this clarity in it. And Jacqueline just blew it open with her personal stories, her vulnerability, her tenderness, and her fierceness and her power. And we bring all of those together. And of course, the invitation is by these sharings, by this summer program, but the invitation is always to become Homo Amor, for each and every one of us to resonate with this and to think like, okay, how does this evolutionary impulse, how does it want to move inside of me? How does outrageous love want to act through me. So that's the invitation that we have for each other here every week. So all of us here, we're not just consumers, we're not just listening and then turning the computer off and then going our ways again. Well, you can do that, but the invitation is much bigger. The invitation is to play a larger game. Each and every one of us here on this call is here for a reason, and there's a great invitation for all of us here. So for example, Anne-Marie, I see that you are here, and Becca and Carol, Caroline and Sherry, David, Deborah, Dene, I hope I pronounced your name right, Hans, Ineke, Jerry, Joycey, Colleen, Lily, Lynn, Margie, Oriana, Paul, Rob, Suzette, just to name a few of our names, to feel each other here in this unique self symphony. And so I just want to share two things with you, and then we're going into our closing, into our dance party and saying goodbyes together. But what I want to share in the beginning, Christina mentioned it already, in September 24th, we're going to start this journey of awakening as evolutionary unique self. And this beautiful term has been spoken about a lot today. So if you feel like you want to deepen in this journey and awaken your unique self, then you're invited to come and study with us. And we are here as an evolutionary community, and studying together, practicing together is so important. So we invite you to step in as a member of One Mountain. And as we always say, we're not here for a win-lose metrics. We're not trying, our goal is not to make money, but we do need resources to grow and together lift this revolution to the next level. So if you can, please become a member and share your resources. We invite each other to give $50 a month, but if you can give more, that is really amazing as well. I know some people are giving $200, even $500 a month. So give as much as you can give, but even if you can't give anything, please step in and participate. Just send me an email and you're welcome, welcome, welcome. So September 24th, we're starting the Unique Self course. In the beginning, we're going through the original course, and it's going to be led by Claire Molinar, which is really exciting because she is the senior teacher of Unique Self, and she initiated the Unique Self Institute, and we're launching that in September, of course, together with Dr. Mark Gaffney, and David, Christina, and Jamie will also be facilitating in that course. And we're going through the original course in the beginning, the original teachings of Unique Self, and then Dr. Mark Gaffney, starting in January, will deepen that study course, because Unique Self has evolved so much and there's so much more to share on it. So that's an exciting journey that we're all taking together this year. And the second journey that we are taking is to participate in the evolutionary sense-making community. And this is about bringing this Dharma into the world and participating in that. And the way that we do that is by working with the transcripts of our beautiful weekly teachings here. I shared before, every week we transcribe the teachings of Dr. Mark Gaffney. We edit them and we publish them on Medium so everyone can find them, and we kind of download it into the web and into culture, which is a very important thing to do, of course. And we're now in the process of creating groups of people, like a small mystical society of holy editors who are working and creating together with this Dharma. And it's an amazing opportunity because you get to actually study the Dharma while you are reading through the transcripts and editing. And like I said, it's an evolutionary sense-making community. So we're going to make it like an amazing party. We're going to get together in September. There's a big meeting with anyone who's interested to step into this holy work. You're welcome to come there. So I'll share my email address in the chat box. You can reach out to me if you want to receive an invitation to that. And then from there, we're going to burst this Dharma into the world. So welcome, welcome, welcome. All you need is some skills with computers is helpful if you want to edit, and some knowledge, of course, of the English language. There's different stages where you can participate. Some of it is very light editing, just cleaning up a document, for example, and some is deeper editing, or maybe even proofreading the books that we will publish, and that requires a little bit more knowledge of the Dharma. So maybe that is for people who are studying the Dharma a little bit longer. But please join the party, and I can't wait to see you, to get to know each other, and to start creating, to be in the pleasure of creating and putting things out into the world. And with that, we're going to dance. As every week, we are inviting you to turn on your camera. I know there's always lots of people here who are shy to turn on the camera, so maybe this week you will take your unique risk and do it anyway. We are inviting you to promote as panelists, so please click yes, and then you will be able to turn on your camera. We're going to dance on